Hey guys, you will learn about definition, function and classification of carbohydrates in this video. Carbohydrates can be defined as polyhydroxyaldehydes or polyhydroxyketones or their derivatives. They contain aldehyde or ketone group along with many hydroxyl groups. In plants, glucose is synthesized from carbon dioxide and water during photosynthesis. It is stored as a starch and used as a structural framework as cellulose. Animals consume carbohydrates synthesized by plants and converted into glucose, which is used as energy. Excess glucose is stored in the form of glycogen or can be converted to fats. Functions of carbohydrates are: glucose is the instant source of energy. Glucon D contains glucose. They advertise it as a jaan mein jaan dal de peete hi. Second important function of carbohydrate is the storage form of energy. Example: starch in plants and glycogen in animals. Pentoses like ribose and deoxyribose are constituents of nucleotides and nucleic acid. Lactose is the milk nutrient of young mammals. Dermatan sulfate, keratan sulfate and chondroitin sulfate are the structural component of cell membrane. Cellulose and pectin serve as dietary fibers. Heparin act as an anticoagulant. Dermatan sulfate, chondroitin sulfate and keratan sulfate are the structural components of cartilage, tendons and cornea. Hyaluronic acid acts as a lubricant. Carbohydrates are precursor for other organic compounds such as lipids and amino acids. Carbohydrates can be classified according to the number of sugar molecules in them. Saccharide is the Greek word for sugar. They are classified as monosaccharides, oligosaccharides and polysaccharides. Monosaccharides are the simplest form of sugar and cannot be further hydrolyzed. Depending on the functional group, they are further divided into aldoses and ketoses. Depending on the number of carbon atom, they are classified into trioses, tetroses, pentoses, hexoses and heptoses. Examples of trioses are glyceraldehyde and dihydroxyacetone seen in glycolysis. Tetroses are erythrose and erythrulose. Pentoses are ribose and ribulose. Hexoses are glucose galactose and fructose. Heptoses are glucoheptose and pseudoheptulose. Tetroses, pentoses and heptoses are seen in HMP shunt. Oligosaccharides are the carbohydrate with 2 to 10 monosaccharide units joined together by glycosidic bonds. They are further classified as the disaccharide, trisaccharide, tetrasaccharides depending on the number of sugar unit produced on hydrolysis. Disaccharides are, the name suggests, di means 2. They will give 2 sugar units on hydrolysis. They are further classified as reducing disaccharides and non-reducing disaccharides. Examples of reducing disaccharides are lactose, which contain glucose and galactose linked by beta-1,4 glycosidic bonds, maltose, which contain glucose and glucose linked by alpha-1,4 glycosidic bonds, and isomaltose contains glucose and glucose linked by alpha-1,6 glycosidic bonds. Lactulose contains galactose and fructose linked by alpha-1,4 glycosidic bond. This lactulose is used as a laxative. The non-reducing disaccharides are the sucrose, which contain glucose and fructose linked by alpha-1 beta-2 glycosidic linkage, and trehalose, which contain glucose and glucose linked by alpha-1,1 glycosidic linkage. In reducing disaccharides, the reducing groups, that is aldehydes and ketones, are involved in bond formation and they do not exhibit the property of reduction, hence called non-reducing disaccharides. Example of trisaccharide is raffinose, tetrasaccharide is stachylose, pentasaccharide is verbascose. Polysaccharides are the carbohydrates having more than 10 monosaccharide units linked by glycosidic linkages. They are classified as homopolysaccharides made up of single monomeric units and heteropolysaccharides made up of different monosaccharide units. Examples of homopolysaccharides are starch, which is made up of alpha-D-glucose. Glycogen is also polymer of alpha-D-glucose but seen in animals. Cellulose is polymer of beta-D-glucose, which is main constituent of dietary fibers. The dietary fibers provider of age add bulk to the food, helps in peristalsis, prevent constipation, delays glucose and cholesterol absorption, protects against colon cancer. Another homopolysaccharide, inulin, is polymer of fructose. It is used for measuring glomerular filtration rates. Dextrins are the intermediate head of hydrolytic product of starch. Dextrans are the bacterial and yeast polysaccharides. They use as a plasma volume expander. Chitin is polymer of N-acetyl glucosamine is seen in exoskeleton of insects. Now coming to heteropolysaccharides, examples of heteropolysaccharides are agar, which is polymer of sulfated galactose and glucose, gums, which is polymer of sugar and sugar acids, pectin contains galacturonic acid and rhamnose. Coming to mucopolysaccharides, mucopolysaccharides are heteropolysaccharides. They are also called as glycosaminoglycans. Examples are hyaluronic acid. This is only unsulfated mucopolysaccharide. It is formed by repetitive units of N-acetyl glucosamine and glucuronic acid. This is seen in embryogenic tissues and it has a role in cell migration. Heparin contains repetitive units of glucosamine sulfate and glucuronic acid sulfate or hyaluronic acid sulfate. It acts as an anticoagulant. Chondroitin sulfate, it contains N-acetyl galactosamine sulfate and glucuronic acid. It is seen in cartilages and bones. Dermatan sulfate contains N-acetyl galactosamine sulfate and hyaluronic acid is seen in skin and cornea. Keratan sulfate is the only mucopolysaccharide without uronic acid. It contains repeating units of N-acetyl glucosamine sulfate and galactose seen in cornea and tendons. Heparan sulfate contains repeating units of N-acetyl glucosamine sulfate and hyaluronic acid sulfate. It is important for cell communication and glomerular filtration. Coming to sugar substitutes or artificial sweeteners, some compounds are used as sugar sweeteners. Example, acesulfame made from acidoacetic acid, aspartame made from aspartic acid and phenylalanine, sucralose which is trichlorosucrose, cyclamate, saccharin and stevia. Stevia is plant-based. These are very sweet in taste but not absorbed, hence they use as a sweetener for diabetes patients as they will not increase blood sugar level. This is all about carbohydrates. Thank you.